Hello, I'm Mayor Michael Glotz, along with Tinley Park's Village Board members. If there's one question that we get asked the most, it's probably, why is the Tinley Park District developing the mental health center property at 183rd and Harlem? And why isn't the village working with them together on it? Shouldn't we just be happy the property is finally being developed? And even if it is at the expense of Tinley Park taxpayers, isn't a regional sportsplex better than a racino? Along with the questions come false rumors, including one that claims the only reason the village didn't develop a racino on the property was because State Senator Michael Hastings and State Representative Bob Rita put a stop to it. This one in particular is especially frustrating, as it was Rita and Hastings who championed a racino in the first place. The story of the Tinley Park Mental Health Center is a long and complex one with a lot of moving parts, which is why I'm laying everything out in the video you're about to see. I don't just tell you the full story either. I back it up with evidence. By the way, facts and evidence are a far cry from the barrage of threats, smears, and baseless accusations levied against the village recently by certain state officials who will stop at nothing to drag the village's name through the mud. But lies never last very long under close scrutiny, as you're about to see. No doubt sharing this information publicly will result in even more threats, smears, accusations, and abuses of power by state officials. I know it's a lot to take in, but Tinley Park residents deserve to know the full story. For months, there has been false information circulating regarding the Tinley Park Mental Health Center property and the Village of Tinley Park's involvement with its sale and development. Please allow me a few minutes to set the record straight. Unlike the people who are responsible for spreading this information, I won't engage in speculation or resort to cheap insults, but instead provide a very clear timeline of events, with documentation to back it up. Facts matter. I love Tinley Park too much and care about its welfare too deeply to let lies rule the conversation. State Senator Michael Hastings, State Representative Bob Rita, and the Tinley Park District leaders, including Lisa Donovan and Ashley Rubino, have been saying for years that the village wanted to bring a racino to the property, and that Rita and Hastings stopped it. That's not exactly true. The state of Illinois owned the 280-acre Tinley Park Mental Health Center property at the corner of 183rd Street and Harlem Avenue from its construction in the 1950s through 2012, when it closed as a cost-cutting measure. For more than 10 years, it sat vacant, with the Tinley Park District recently buying the property from the state for just $1. As you may know, former Mayor Ed Zabrocki and his board had even been trying to purchase the land since the 1990s and even created a TIF district for it in 2015 to aid in development. In 2016, a year before I was elected to the village board as a trustee, the village held multiple open houses with the community to talk about its preferred use. The village did this because it cared, and still cares, about developing the property in a way that benefits the entire community. In June 2017, Senator Hastings and newly elected Mayor Jacob Vandenberg worked behind the scenes with Rick Heidner to develop renderings for a racino on the Tinley Park Mental Health Center grounds. They worked on those plans through January 23, 2018. A couple of months later, on August 3rd, former Mayor Vandenberg held a meeting in his office with developer and former trustee Carl Vandenberg, his uncle, and former village manager Dave Dorgan to discuss plans for the mental health center property. In September of that same year, former Mayor Vandenberg went to then village manager Dave Niemeyer to inform him that he had a developer willing to purchase the land. Vandenberg never mentioned it was his Uncle Carl working with Dave Dorgan, and Niemeyer was never included or informed of the August 3rd meeting. In July 2018, the village issued a request for proposals seeking firms interested in developing the property. Everything seemed okay until 6 months later. On January 3rd, 2019, when former Mayor Vandenberg called a last-minute special board meeting. At the direction of Senator Hastings, former Mayor Vandenberg was pushing for the board to enter into an agreement with Melody Square LLC, a company run by Rick Heidner, who was partnered with Dave Dorgan with plans that included senior living. It was during this meeting that we first realized something wasn't right. I, nor former trustee Michael Pinito, were ever informed that Vandenberg and the other 4 board members wanted this item on the agenda. Vandenberg decided to bring it to the board for only 1 reading, despite this being the largest project that would ever happen in the village. I remember that day well, and you could see it for yourself on the posted video of the meeting, which can be found on the village's YouTube page. Village Hall was packed with angry residents, and because the rules changed so that the vote could pass without proper discussion, I made 2 motions to extend public comment from 4 to 6 minutes and move public comment before we voted to give the property to Melody Square. Both of my motions failed for a lack of a second. Melody Square's proposal included remediating only 200 of the 280 acres and awarding the developer $69 million in incentives. But a competing proposal from Urban Street called for remediating all 280 acres with only $50 million in incentives. At the time, nobody could understand why Vandenberg wanted to give a developer $19 million more for 80 acres less. I voted against the proposal, but it passed anyway. Shortly thereafter, Senator Hastings introduced 2 Senate resolutions, Senate Resolution 0074 and Senate Resolution 0075. The first was to conduct an environmental study on the property for the village. And the second was to have 3 proposals done to sell the property to the village. Within 16 days, the resolution died. In the early summer 2019, the proposal for senior living had been scrapped. Legislation was passed by Rita and Hastings, and the developer was instead moving forward with a plan for a so-called racino. The renderings were never presented to the board, but dated design number 2 when presented in May of 2019, a whole year before the board even entered into an agreement to develop the property. As I pointed out earlier, Village Hall visitor logs show Vandenberg's meeting with representatives from Melody Square as early as August 3rd, 2017. A meeting that, based on how quickly a design was created, seemingly spurred the development of plans for a racino. This was done without anyone ever being aware. Former Mayor Vandenberg had Rick Heidner come to the village board meeting in executive session on May 21st, 2019, to unveil the change in the plan to a racino on the property. All the groundwork had already been in place to have legislation changed within 10 days after executive session was over. In May of 2019, while the board was presented with plans of a racino for the first time, Representative Rita used a procedural move in the Illinois House of Representatives to amend Senate Bill 0690, the Invest in Kids Act. The bill had already passed the Illinois Senate, and with limited time remaining for bills to be passed before the General Assembly adjourned for the summer, the bill was passed by the House and concurred by the Senate, all in the span of 3 days. Buried on page 474 of the 816-page bill was a provision that allowed a racino to be hosted in Orland Township, where the Tinley Park Mental Health Center is located. The timeline is pretty clear here. On May 31st, 2019, Rita filed House Amendment 2 to allow a racino in Orland Township. On June 1st, 2019, Rita was made the chief sponsor. On June 1st, 2019, Rita filed House Amendment 3. On June 2nd, 2019, Hastings was added as the chief sponsor from the Senate. On June 2nd, 2019, Bob Rita and Michael Hastings passed Senate Bill 0690 to add a racino to the Invest in Kids Act. Why were plans for a racino buried deep inside legislation aimed at helping kids? Those two things do not relate at all to each other, but the bill was amended just the same. The point is, All this was taking place for years before the board even knew anything about it. It was all happening behind the scenes in a private meeting with Hastings, Vandenberg, and Heidner. Vandenberg left office in April 2021, and I became mayor. Soon after, all my requests to Senator Hastings for his assistance in procuring the land were ignored. And while a deal was reached in January 2022 for the state to sell the property to the village, Senator Hastings failed to file the bill needed to finalize the sale, effectively killing the deal. Why would he kill a deal that he once firmly supported? To answer that, I take you back to February 10th, 2022, when Senator Hastings called village manager Pat Carr and demanded that I support him or he would kill the bill to sell the mental health center to the village. He finished by saying that he would go to war with the village and that he has a war chest at his disposal to ruin the mayor's life. On February 18th, 2022, Senator Hastings called Pat Carr again. This time he said that I had to endorse him for re-election if we wanted the mental health center bill to proceed. He said that this would all go away if I apologized and endorsed him. Pat Carr informed Senator Hastings that he had to contact me for that, but he never did. In the fall of 2022, the Tinley Park District announced it intended to purchase the land from the state. We had, of course, had informal conversations for over a decade. At no point before that announcement did the Park District ever indicate any sincere interest in the property. The village put in years of work, even creating the TIF district to generate revenue. And at the last minute, out of the blue, the Park District swoops in and without any kind of discussion or communications just takes over. To say we were blindsided is putting it mildly. All that after the village spent well over a decade trying to get the state to sell the land and being forced to purchase the land for its $4.5 million appraised price via the State Surplus Property Act. Much like the Rino bill, the bill authorizing the sale of the land to the Park District passed in just a span of days. The bill designating September as Alopecia Awareness Month was gutted by Senator Hastings and passed over to Representative Rita to carry in the House. It took just days for the land to be given to the Park District for the price tag of $1. I don't think it's a coincidence that Representative Rita's daughter, Ashley Rubino, is a Park District Commissioner who also works for the state of Illinois under Central Management Services, former owners of the property. Again, I ask you a similar question. What does the mental health center property have to do with alopecia? The answer is, of course, absolutely nothing. These bills were simply used as a camouflage to sneak other legislation into the end zone. It's sickening that this kind of thing happens. This entire debacle was set up as far back as June 2017. And the real kicker here is that they're claiming to have stopped a Racino development that they themselves created and championed. Myself and Trustee Panito were the only ones to vote against them acquiring the property on January 3rd, 2019. Yet I supposedly wanted to bring a Racino here. It doesn't make any sense, especially when you look at all the facts. We have the renderings, board minutes, video footage, and legislative action that they all passed as proof. They'll stop at nothing, even abusing their power to smear me, the village, and the board, and strong-arming and bullying their way into the village of Tinley Park. Here it all is. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at mglotz@tinleypark.org or call me at 708-444-5020. Thank you for your time.